So, we're gonna talk about Frank Herbert's Dune, his iconic series. This is the first one in the series. And I want you to check out this cover. This cover is phenomenal. So let's get right to it, right? I was expecting this book to be outrageously good. I thought I would be mesmerized. I thought I would be immersed. I thought I would be captivated by the characters or the plot or the richness of the descriptions. I thought that this world and the people in this world would tempt me to fall in love with Arrakis. But it did not happen. Now, this is not a bad book, okay? And it's not written in a bad way. It's just that Frank Herbert writes in a dull way about dull things. He is not a bad writer. He just writes in a dull way about dull things. Now, that is not to say that this book is a complete failure, because it is not. It has some good parts. But most of all, this epic, iconic, beloved book, Dune, lacks something, in my view, that makes it a fantastic book. This is not a book I will ever read again. In my view, a good book, a phenomenal book, is a book that you will keep on reading again and again until the day you die. And this is not that type of book, okay? The cover is amazing. There are some good parts, but overall, this was Dullsville. Many parts of this book were just awfully bland, stale, and so on, right? So, which leads me to ask this question to all of you who are watching: if this book, Dune, by Frank Herbert, the first book in the series, Dune, it is known worldwide, right? A it is a cultural thing. It is a phenomenon, and it has been a phenomenon for a couple of generations since the 60s, since it came out. So I want to ask you, if Dune is your one of your favorite books, if you all love this book, if you can't stop reading it again and again, please tell me in the comment section why this book is so loved by you, because I just don't get it. And I'm not trying to offend or insult your tastes. If this book is your favorite, then that's swell. I just want to know why so many people praise it to high heaven, because I just don't get it, right? I just don't get it. And maybe I'm missing something. Maybe this is my fault. But I want to know what's about this book that so many people just love to the point of an obsession, right? So please tell me why this book is your favorite or among your favorites, because I just don't get it. I will never read this book again. And I have to stipulate this again. This is not a bad book, but it isn't an amazing one as well. It isn't. Where to begin? The Atreides come down on Arrakis, aka Dune, and they take over the joint because some emperor decided so, for whatever reason. Because the Harkonnens were the previous, masters of Dune, and they were removed for some reason. and then the Arrakis was given to the Atreides for some reason, and it turns out that this was a plot, conspired by the Harkonnen, the Baron Harkonnen, Vladimir, and the Emperor Padish to destroy the Atreides because they were getting too powerful. And we find out that the Atreides and the Harkonnens, they are related by blood, thanks to the Bene Gesserits, and the Atreides are also related to the Emperor himself. So, a lot of connections, and I think the Emperor was manipulated by the Harkonnen Baron. I think taking out Duke Leto was a terrible mistake. A terrible mistake on the Emperor's part, because Duke Leto, of course, was a reasonable, collected, logical, commonsensical leader. He did not crave power. He did not seek to dethrone the current emperor. And we find out that that Baron Harkonnen is actually wanting to put one of his heirs on the throne. He wants a Harkonnen to be on the throne, which is laughable because they are terrible people, right? So the Atreides, they arrive on Arrakis, and they settle in, and of course, soon after, the Harkonnens with the Emperors and the Sardaukari, they strike, and they take out the Atreides. Duke Leto dies because of a betrayal by some, Dr. Yue, right? Talk about a non-entity of a character, right? So Dr. Yue betrays Duke Leto for the Harkonnens because Harkonnens have his wife and she's already dead, but whatever, right? To talk about not caring about this character, right? Who cares about Dr. Yue and his betrayal? Even his betrayal leaves me emotionless because he is not even a one-dimensional character to me. He shouldn't belong in this book. And that's what we're gonna, if you're gonna read this book, that's what you're gonna stumble upon. You're gonna stumble upon a lot of redundant, unnecessary, irrelevant characters like Dr. Yue, right? And someone tell me this. I don't know why Dunkin' Donuts, Idaho, Gurney Halleck, and Hawat, why they exist in this book. Okay, to me, from beginning to end, these three characters who have their point of view chapters, mind you, they are completely indistinguishable to me. They are the same person. I cannot differentiate between one or the other. I can't do it. I can't do it. They are completely pointless and meaningless to me in this book. They should not belong in this book, right? And they have point of view chapters again and again for some reason, right? Dunkin' Donuts, Idaho. Are you kidding me, bro? Right? And here's a problem. Duke Leto, he was a decent character. I liked him. But I think he was killed off too soon to allow Paul to come to the forefront and, chase after his destiny and to become the quasi-Hazarak or whatever the fuck, right? He's gonna be the one who knocks, basically, right? The big boy, right? He's gonna be the muad'dib, right? So Duke Leto was killed too soon in order to allow Paul to become the main character, which is a problem because he was Duke Leto was a decent character, and his death should have been postponed for a while, and his character should have been developed more. When he died, although he died in a cool way with the poisonous tooth, uh, his death yet again left me completely emotionless, right? Because he died too soon. We did not get to experience a lot of his day to day activities as a person, as a ruler, etc. He gets taken out, or he takes himself out. Baron Harkonnen survives, uh, and it is a bad thing because Duke Leto, to me, had the potential to be a Ned Stark. Of course, Duke Leto is never going to be a Ned Stark. They are completely different in terms of character, right? I mean, even if you just watch the show, when Ned Stark died, we all cried. When Duke Leto died, I was like, nah, whatever. So Duke Leto is no Ned Stark, but he could have been, right? He could have been as an important character as Paul, his son, but the author just wanted to get him out of the way to motivate Paul to become what he was meant to be, right? And then we have the Bene Gesserits. Listen, the Bene Gesserits, as of right now, I finished this first book. I've started reading the second. For the moment, the Bene Gesserits are not a threat to me, right? In my view, they are not a threat. They are not scary. They are not intimidating. They are not dominating or domineering in any way, right? So I hope that changes in the other books. So far, the Bene Gesserits are a complete joke to me. I like their so-called abilities or powers or skills, which is mental abilities, the art of persuasion, stuff like that. But they're nothing to be awestruck about. You got Lady Jessica; she does what she does, right? Her character isn't anything special. What else? The Freeman. Okay, listen. The problem with this book is that we focus too much on these Fremen, and this desert of a planet, where a good chunk of this book is spent on a desert, going from place to place, worrying about water. And I understand why water is so precious. It is the essence of life, blah blah blah. But it keeps on going, and it becomes so dull, right? So mediocre, so ordinary that I just don't give a fuck, right? We spend too much time in the desert with these Fremen, and nothing really happens. Nothing really happens. They're wearing these suits that recycle their, liquids, right? In order for them to survive. And this is beaten to death over and over again. It's like beating a dead horse. Their suits and their water and the greens, the greenery and the water and the desert and the water is important and what have you. And it's just too much. It's too repetitive, right? By the end of this book, I don't care about the Fremen. I don't care about their obsession with water, even though I understand why they are obsessed with it, right? Because, they're in the desert. But I don't care about them at all. I don't care about their struggle. I don't care about their beliefs, which are bland to me, right? And here's another thing. Listen, this Dune planet, right? At least the cities and the Fremens, they should have been, you know, exotic, mysterious. They should be captivating. They should have a sort of mystique about them, right? There is no exotic, foreign flair to be had here. We arrive at Dune, blah blah blah. Paul does things, the Fremen, and we're we're fighting the Harkonnens now, and that's it. There is no richness of the descriptions. I am not immersed in this land, in this story. Everything is completely devoid of anything extraordinary, right? Or captivating, or whatever. I mean, at least the capital, where they're staying, the Atreides, I mean, that should have been, a sort of citadel filled with all sorts of, you know, extremes, right? There should have been all sorts of movements, all sorts of colors, cultures, odors, music, sounds, bustle, you know, something. There's nothing. There is no description that can captivate me for me to be immersed in this story. There is no way. Absolutely, right? That's a terrible thing. Dune itself should have been a very important character in this book, right? The environment itself should have been a very potent character, but it's just a desert planet, and the Fremen are just barely surviving, right? They don't have a rich history. They don't have a budding culture that is foreign and exotic, right? They don't have beliefs that strike me as inspiring in any way, right? Again, there is no mystique about it. There is no subtlety. There is no something to grab your attention. It's like you should land on Arrakis and you should be amazed at what you see. This different different experience, right, from your own, but it does not happen. It is bland. It is plain, right? That's the problem with this book. Two very important problems here. Probably the main problems with this book. The sandworms and the spice melange. They are amazing, amazing parts. Probably the best parts in this book. But they are completely underused. Which is a crime, right? Which is a crime. The spice melange gives you all of these abilities, this insight. You get blue eyes, you live longer, you have, a sense of prophecy, right? You have a certain special kind of insight, right? Some people have more insight, some people have less insight. But pretty much everybody that uses the spice has a sort of sixth sense. But to me, it seems that there are no consequences to this spice melange. The spice melange has no consequences. Nobody has any side effects. Nobody has, birth defects or mutations or mental or emotional or even physical deformities because of this, spice, which is a problem. There should be consequences to this spice. It sounds too good to be true. That's the problem. And the spice melange is treated as a commodity that is taken for granted, and that's a terrible thing to. That is a big mistake on the part of the author. This very expensive, very rare material or substance that gives you all of these abilities, that is priceless. It only occurs on Dune, on Arrakis, and it is treated as a commodity, right? As coffee or as, pepper or salt. People just eat it day by day, 3 meals a day, spice melange. They have all sorts of foods. They have tea. They have coffee with spice melange, right? Some of them might trip balls on the spice. But pretty much a lot of people on Dune and in other galaxies and on other planets, they all are dependent on the spice to survive, because once you start eating it or consume it, you become addicted to it. And if you stop consuming it, you will die. And you might say, well, that's a consequence. Well, that is a consequence that can be very easily solved. You either stay on Dune and continue eating it, or you go somewhere else and you just buy the spice, because the spice is heavily commercialized in the universe, right? So people outside of Dune are dependent on spice, and they have a constant supply of spice. So there is no consequence to the spice. The spice melange should have been, a sort of sacrament. It should have been, the holy of holies. You just don't eat it every day constantly. It loses all of its power. It becomes just an ordinary material or substance. That is a bad choice on the part of the writer. And I don't remember if it was stated in this book. I don't know if it was stated in the book, but from what I remember, because we've all been spoiled, but what I remember is that the spice is a product from the sandworms. Basically, from what I remember, the spice is, the feces of the sandworms. But I might be wrong, right? I might be wrong. I don't really remember. So I thought that the sandworms produced the spice by consuming or absorbing a lot of water, right? Because it is stated in the book that you can find pockets of water if you dig deep, but it immediately vanishes without reason. So that got me thinking, well, of course the sandworms are absorbing the water to produce this extremely potent, drug. But it isn't so, because it is revealed that the sandworms will die very easily if they come into contact with water, right? And now on to the sandworms. The sandworms are awesome. The problem with them is the same as with the spice melange. The sandworms are heavily underused. It seems like the Fremen kind of worship them, kind of, maybe, but not really. The sandworms should have been semi-deities that should have been kind of worshipped in a sort of pagan way by these Fremen. Okay, the sandworms should have been mythological deities, in my view, and they should have been worshipped in a way. There should have been a rich mythology and a rich worship of these worms. But yet again, Frank Herbert, makes a terrible decision with his writing, where the worms are reduced, as of right now in this book, to, they're just worms. They're just mindless creatures. And it's just so unsatisfying. And the greatest travesty of all, which lessens the worth of the worms to absolute zero. It belittles the worms. It removes any value the worms have. The worms, because of this, are not a threat. They are not dangerous to me. They do not scare me. I am not awed because the worms. as it is revealed in the book, the worms can be easily ridden by the Fremen as a sort of transportation. You just have to use some hooks, and the worm won't go underground, and you got yourself a worm train. So the great sandworms that should have been these behemoths, the sandworms that should have been these almost Lovecraftian monsters, are reduced to fucking transportation. They are fucking trains for the Fremen, which is disappointing and dissatisfying to me as a reader. Right? It completely destroys whatever worth the worms have, as well as the spice melange. They are completely destroyed by being treated as commodities, the worms being treated as mindless creatures that are used for transportation. You know, bad choices, and bad decisions when it came to the writing. I don't know what Herbert was thinking, right? This book could have been phenomenal. This book could have been. This book has all of the telltale signs of all the potential of being a superb masterpiece, but it never gets there. And I have to say this, I don't know, I don't understand why so many people view this book as just this benchmark of sci-fi and what have you. Okay, to me it isn't. It is a decent book, but that's just it, right? You have the Space Guild, which is, barely touched upon. They hold a monopoly on, space transportation. What I really liked about this book was how Baron Harkonnen, even though he was just a completely repugnant, repulsive person, he stood out to me. But I think he should have been fleshed out a little bit more, as just like a Duke Leto should have been. So Baron Harkonnen did his job well as being the villain, but that's all he was. There was nothing, you know, uh, eccentric or out of the ordinary about him. He does his job well of being the antagonist, but that's it, right? And he dies like a bitch at the end, which is of course deserved. His death was satisfying. He died like a chump. I mean, he got murked by a 4-year-old girl, okay, by Paul's sister, Aaliyah. Uh, and she is an interesting character. I expect great things from her because she seems interesting, even more. She has more potential than Paul to become, you know, an interesting character. And there was one thing I didn't really understand. So we have Duke Leto, which is Paul's father, and then we find out that there was a previous Duke Leto, which was, the grandfather of Paul and the father of our Duke Leto. And it is hinted at that he died in a bullfight or whatever, and they have this portrait of him with the bull, and the bull has, blood on the horns. But he was a duke. He was, you know, a boss of one of the big houses, and he died in a bullfight, or I don't know. I didn't understand it. Right. So maybe you can explain that to me. Was it a conspiracy? Was Baron Harkonnen involved? Were the Bene Gesserits involved? I don't know. I don't know. And then we have Paul, who awakens his Kwisatz Haderach powers. He is destined to become this muad'dib, this al-Gaib, this the one who knocks, the chosen one, the Messiah, whatever. And he has a vision of a jihad, of a holy war that will be fought in his name, because he will be, he will be a Messiah. And this jihad will ravage the entire universe, right? So he is scared and he wants to prevent it, but he doesn't really take the steps necessary in any direction. Not really. He has these visions, and then he moves on. Really, he doesn't do anything, to prevent it. He understands that what is happening, that these Fremen are worshiping him. He understands that it is a problem, that this could lead to a lot of bloodshed, and he knows what he has to do to stop it. But at the same time, it is pretty much clear that this holy war, this jihad, cannot be stopped, because even if he dies, uh, the Fremen will keep on fighting and spilling blood in his name, right? Because he will become a holy martyr, right? So the jihad can't really be stopped in any way, shape, or form. So I'm really interested about their powers, which seem to be uh, wholly mental, which is that they have trained their minds to the highest potential, right? So there is no sort of telepathy or, the ability to affect physical objects with the mind. It is just that they have a intellectual prowess and an insight that are heightened beyond, the normal level. So there is no what you might call supernatural, or, superpowers. It's all just training your mind, and if you train your mind, your body will follow, right? uh, Fear is the mind killer, right? So from what I understand, there is no superpower involved, right? It is just pure mental ability, you know and and, and it is all right, but I wish it would be more than just being able to outsmart, or, persuade your enemies to do what you want, right? All of this power, this mental ability, seems to me to be the art of persuasion, that you can influence somebody to do what you want them to do without them knowing it. So that's what it seems to me. That is the summary of this mental ability. And Paul, being the chosen one, he has, crazy mental abilities, right? And he sees, he sees the flow of time, right? And he scares the Bene Gesserits because they don't understand him, and they are even more afraid of his sister Aliyah, because she's a monstrosity, right? She became a Bene Gesserit, a priestess as a fetus, right? So these two, Paul and especially Aliyah, have potential of being, more than just cardboard cutout characters. They have the potential to be more than they seem at the moment, and I hope that their characters are fleshed out more in the other books, right? What else, really? So by the end, Baron Harkonnen is defeated by a 4-year-old, and the Emperor surrenders. Paul leads the Fremen to victory, and just like that, Paul becomes, the new emperor by marrying the former emperor's daughter, Irulan. And just like that, he becomes the emperor. And the book ends quite randomly, you know. The book doesn't end on a high note. It doesn't end on any note at all. It just stops. So the Bene Gesserits, they manipulate the gene pool from the main houses, the big houses of this government, so that they can produce the best examples of people. They want to keep the bloodline pure, because they believe by doing so, if they control which type of person is born in a position of power and leadership, they somehow believe that they can maintain a cosmic order or something like that, a peace, right? Which to me appears to be extremely flawed, and not that it is not fail safe, right? And they planned for Lady Jessica to have a daughter, which would become, in their mind, the Kwisatz Haderach, right? The one who can be in many places at once. But for some reason, which isn't really explained in the book, I don't remember. Maybe it is. If it is, please tell me. But Jessica, despite being told that she has to produce a daughter, a female, that would become the chosen one, she for some reason has a boy, aka Paul, which seems to be a problem because he is a male Bene Gesserit, and I don't think it is explained why males cannot be Bene Gesserits. Okay, in this book, I don't think it is explained. If it is, please tell me in the comments. But it seems to be a sort of unwritten law that males cannot be Bene Gesserits, and that a male should not be the Kwisatz Haderach, right? And because Paul is born, and because he is a Bene Gesserit, and it is shown that he is the Kwisatz Haderach, the big boy, because of that, it seems to turn the tide of destiny. It seems that this outcome wasn't, foreseen by the Bene Gesserit, right? And because Paul was born, instead of being a girl, because Paul was born, it seems that fate itself, has changed. It seems that fate itself has changed in an unforeseen way. It has taken an unknown path, right? Which might be a good thing, which might be a bad thing. We don't really know. I don't know. What else? This book, I think it was written in the 60s, right? This book in particular is, of course, it is a foundation for sci-fi because of this book and many others, like like writers like Philip K. Dick, Huxley, Orwell, Asimov, uh, Bradbury, and so on. Because of these writers in sci-fi, they were the foundation for what we have today. So a lot of today's, you know, dystopian, sci-fi, technological, cyberpunk type of works, they are here because these books like this one were the foundation, right? And today, of course, we are so saturated in special effects and crazy sci-fi uh, odysseys that, you know, reading this book in 2021 seems to be, in this day and age, this book seems to be a bit underwhelming, right? And it is. A lot of the concepts and the technologies in this book, etc., are a bit underwhelming, right? But you have to take into consideration that this was written a long time ago, in the 60s, right? And without this book and many others, which I have, exemplified, we wouldn't have sci-fi as it is today. But still, right? Some books are timeless, right? And I understand why a lot of people, praise it so much. But to me, it just doesn't seem that it even doesn't seem to be that much of an influence in my view, because there isn't really a lot of things that I have, noticed that are striking in any way. Like, oh, because of this uh, bit here, that is why we have this today in sci-fi or whatever, as a concept or technology, right? Or a philosophy. Not really, right? So please tell me why this book is so adored today. Why do you love this book so much? Why is it in your top 10 or whatever? Because I just can't see it. And I have to say this again. This is not a bad book. It just seems like it has been surpassed, you know, it has been surpassed over the years, right? Things have evolved, things have progressed, and today this book seems like it is a bit naive, you know, goofy, stumbling about, but that's to be expected, right? And I want to end off with this. So, from what I understand, Frank Herbert, he was a journalist and an ecologist, and he noticed that, his warnings that, the environment was going to hell, it wasn't gaining that much attention. So he decided to put this, you know, ecological message in a novel format. And of course, that's why we have Dune and all of the other books, you know, because this book makes it very, very clear that, water is the most precious, right? And greenery and plants. And the Fremen are struggling to reclaim their home from the desert, which of course they will never succeed, right? Because they're collecting water underground, because there's a plan, because the planetologist Kynes, he had a plan, but he died. But the Fremen, you know, it is uh, it is hinted at that the Fremen will keep on, you know, upholding this plan of, gathering enough water to turn Dune into a lush forest or jungle, which of course will not happen because the plan is silly to me. The Fremen's plan to turn Arrakis into a lush green planet is absurd to me. It is goofy, right? They're just collecting water and planting plants here and there, right? To me, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't seem like it will succeed at all, right? So the author wrote this book primarily to talk about, leadership and the consequences of idolizing a leader to the point of God, of that leader becoming a god. And of course, he also wrote the book to emphasize that we ourselves in the real world, we are taking this planet for granted and we are destroying it. And that we should strive to protect it and prevent, destruction, which of course is going to happen. Okay, if you are a realist, if you are a fatalist, you know, if you apply common sense, and if you're not naive or gullible, you will understand that we will not only destroy ourselves, but we will inevitably take down everything else with us, because that is in our nature. That is human nature. Okay, you don't have to be a scientist or a philosopher or a really smart individual to understand this. You just have to observe humanity for a little while and you will understand this, right? And this reminds me, of George Carlin's stand-ups. The bit with, save the bees, save the trees, save the snails, save those whales. You know, the problem is, the problem is with these people, they have, allegedly, they have good intentions. They want to save the environment, save the planet. The problem is, just like George Carlin said, that our mortal sin, our only mortal sin, was that we had to intervene in nature because of our egos, because of our narcissism, because of our sick idea that we are the ones that can do this, that can save a planet, right? Which, of course, is extremely, it is extremely flawed and wrong. You see, all of our problems and all of our troubles started because we interfered with nature. And every time you interfere with nature, there will be horrible consequences, unforeseen consequences. Just because you plant a forest here doesn't mean that nature will accept this. All right? For every action, there is a consequence. So maybe you planted a forest there, but guess what? There will be side effects somewhere else. That is how, life, nature, the universe, that is how it works. Okay? And we do not, I believe, we do not have the right to interfere with nature's doings. We do not have the right, because we do not understand how nature works, right? Nature knows best, we do not. And that is something that most people will not admit, right? Because the only good thing that we can do is step aside, detach, stop being so selfish to think that we can prevent, complete annihilation by recycling plastic or cans or planting a few flowers. It's never gonna happen, right? It's never gonna happen. We have to stop interfering, but we will never do so because, that is the human condition, okay? And I'm gonna mention George Carlin's bit yet again because it is so relevant even today. right? Even today, right? We are not a threat to this planet. As George Carlin said, we are not a threat. The planet will be fine. We are fucked. The people are fucked. The planet will be fine. The planet will outlast all of us, right? The planet has suffered a lot more than we can imagine, and the planet is still here. So, whatever we do here, it might be a mild, you know, discomfort to the planet, to nature. But nature, the planet, the ecosystem, what have you, it will recover and it will move on, and it will move on after we will be done with, right? Right? I mean, to me, that is obvious. So, no matter what you do, the recycling, the blah blah blah, the Greenpeace, save all the snails, all those poor whales, the bees, if nature wants to exterminate a species, for example, the bees, and because the bees will be gone, we're gonna have a lot of problems, then that's nature's choice. That is what nature has decided. But we cannot accept that. We have to interfere because of our big brains. We're big brained. We're gonna solve this somehow. We're gonna solve this somehow, right? With our ideas, never really grasping that whatever we do, there will be unforeseen consequences. And things will keep getting worse because of our interference, right? But I've rambled and ranted enough. I had a lot of expectations for this book. Whenever I go into reading a book, I have the highest expectations. I went into this book with the need, with the desire to love it. I wanted to love this book. I wanted to be entranced by it. I wanted to be bedazzled by it. I wanted to be immersed in the mystique and the richness, right? And the eccentric nature of this world and its culture and its beliefs and its religious, ideals and so forth. But nothing really came of it. Nothing really, enticed me, unfortunately, which is a sad thing, right? But 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 it is what it is, right? It is what it is. People love this book, and that's fine. That's fine. But I prefer the kind of book that just shatters you, that forces you to stay awake, that haunts you, right? With whatever topic or situation or idea, right? And unfortunately, Dune by Frank Herbert is not that type of book to me, right? It might be to you, but it isn't to me, and that is, you know, that is sad because I wanted to adore this book. I wanted to love this book, right? And with every chapter, it just kept on going, you know, kept on going in all the wrong directions. It focused on a lot of inconsequential characters, right? And so on. A lot of fluff, a lot of unnecessary focus on unnecessary things. But hopefully, the other books will be better, right? Hopefully. And that's about it. That's my review of Dune by Frank Herbert. If books like these that are praised and iconic, if they don't satisfy you, you can always pick a better book to read. That is a light in the darkness. That There will always be better books out there to read. So, you know, if this didn't please you, you know, read better books because they are out there. You know. See ya.